If you want to participate, contact me at ordinarywomenpodcast@gmail.com. I'm sure you have great projects to brag about. You can also follow me and message me on Instagram at ordinarywomenpodcast, on Twitter at ordinarywomenpc, or on Facebook on the page Ordinary Women. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Ordinary Women. Hi Maria, thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Hello Lucy, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Very, very pleased to have you. How are you?
I'm fine. This is a great start to our week. It's very dynamic and very new for me. So I'm very, very excited for this. This is my first podcast, actually. So I'm very excited.
Oh my God, congratulations. Very honored to be your first podcast guest. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Do you want to start by giving us a quick introduction of yourself?
Yes. My name is Maria Zerotiadou. I was born and live in Athens, Greece. I'm 40 years old and I'm currently the managing director for the company Plan of Business, and also I'm a gender equality consultant for the same company.
So interesting. Can't wait to dive a bit more into this. Can you tell us something unusual about you?
Okay. I'm actually terrified of puppet dolls and clowns, and most people tell me that I'm a very good cook. This is not my opinion, since I'm not very subjective to on the thing. And I have a weird thing of not being able to function or work or be in messy environments. I have to have everything settled and in order for me to function. And I also take cold showers even in the most cold days of the winter.
Oh my God, I don't know how you do that. Like, I think that on some things I can relate, the cold shower and everything. Do you like it? Like, does it wake you up or?
I don't like it, but it does wake me up. It does give me some sort of rush of energy when I do it, especially in the morning. Night, not so much, but in the morning, yes.
Right before going to sleep in this, yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, cool. Thanks so much for sharing. Because obviously here in this podcast, we talk a lot about what it's like to be a woman. I like to start by asking, was there a moment or an event in your life when you realized that you are a woman?
Yes, I think it was very, very, very early on my journey, let's say, when I started thinking about what I should do with my life and what should I choose as a profession. And that was very early onset. I think I was 12, 13 years old, going into the puberty, let's say, and into the teenage years. And I started exploring my options, and I actually thought to myself, I have so many limited options, and why would I have these limited options? And all of a sudden, when I asked one of my teachers in high school, why do I have all these limited options? She said, you're a woman. That's why you have these limited options. And I became aware of these limitations, and I became aware of these stereotypes that would follow my gender for no other reason, apparently, but just being a woman. And that gave me a sense of actually what I wanted to change in my life and what I wanted to do. And in a very strange way, what I didn't want to do. I started to separate my no's and my yeses, if I could, if I'm allowed to say so. And it made me fully aware of my femalehood, let's say.
That's so interesting. In a second, we're going to talk about your role models. I'm going to assume that teacher was not one of them.
I wouldn't blame her or anyone else because this is the way they were raised and we were raised. So actually, she was just let's say moving the stereotypes from one generation to the other. So I cannot really blame her. But I would say my two role models. I had two role models back then. First of all, was my mother, because on the contrary of everyone else, she was always telling me, and she's always telling me, that I can actually do whatever I want. regardless of my gender, regardless of my age, regardless of my country. I can actually do whatever I like and do whatever I can and do. And the other role model was Marie Curie. I had read the biography of Marie Curie and her husband while they were doing this research, and I think it was one of the first women that I actually read that was involved in STEM. So she inspired me for that purpose, for following a different path when it comes to profession and dealing with career choices.
That's so interesting. And she's such an interesting figure. How did you first come across her? How did you find her biography?
I think I was looking into something else for a project for my high school. Back then, we didn't have Google, so it was basically encyclopedias and books and libraries. So, looking through encyclopedias, I came across. I think it was a chemistry class. Yes, that was the one. And based on the chemistry class and the discoveries that Marie Curie and her husband had done, I started reading the story of her life and got so much inspiration from her. So much.
Yeah, she's amazing. What's your favorite thing about her?
I think the fact that she was so persistent with her goals, and she never gave up. She was always there. She had the support of her husband, and she was also supporting her husband throughout this whole process. And she was not put down from all the stereotypes and all the difficulties that women had to face when dealing with when working into STEM, especially back then. So I think it was a great role model, and it is still a great role model for young girls and women, of course.
Definitely. And do you have any female role models now?
Yes, I would have to still say my mother. She still inspires me every single day. The way she overcomes her difficulties and the way she empowers everyone around her. And I would have to say the activist, Tarana Burke. She's from the US, and she was the one that founded the Me Too movement in the United States back in 2006.
Yeah, definitely also an amazing woman. What do you think she taught you?
I think she was her way of dealing with the Me Too movement and making it, let's say, visible and present for the whole world to actually acknowledge how gender-based violence is affecting women. Made me want to really look into gender-based violence and domestic violence and start looking into it and start learning for it and how I could actually help in any way possible for this predicament that most women face even once in their lifetime.
Yeah, so good learnings. I really, really like her. She's so amazing.
Exactly.
And do you think that the lack of representation of women in society had an impact on you?
I would have to say that based on the choices, career and social that I made, it didn't have an impact on me, but I could actually see the impact on other women and my friends, my co-workers, my colleagues, my partners in jobs. Always told me that they had this problem, they had that problem based on this low representation of women. Especially when I was working in politics, I could actually see that because women were underrepresented in politics, and it was so obvious. And I think we're doing some serious work based on that, and we are moving forward. And there has been some positive development, but there's still so much work to do and so much more steps to take in order to achieve equality in 50-50 representation.
Definitely, couldn't agree more with that. It's also so interesting to see how intertwined these two things are. Lack of representation of women in politics leads to lack of representation in society, leads to yeah, it's always fascinating and outrageous. Yeah.
If you come to think of it, women represent the 51% of the whole Earth's population. So it would be a waste of energy not to utilize women in order to use their talents, use their knowledge and their expertise full on and 100%. That's my opinion, actually.
Yeah, completely. It's not really rational to have men do everything. Yeah. That's, yeah. Cool. Well, like, not cool for that part, but thank you for this
The process is very cool and the podcast is very cool. Yes.
Let's focus on the positive.
Yes.
And speaking of positive, I'd like to hear about something that you did and that you're proud of. So can you start by presenting what you want to talk about?
Basically, I'm very proud that I have managed to actually combine the managing director part of my job with the gender equality part of my job. And I would like to thank the owner of the company who's allowing me to do that. But basically, it's been 2 years almost, I think, come January, I think it will be 2 years that we are introducing this element of gender equality consultant into the private companies. And what we're actually doing is help companies, either the small and medium or even bigger companies with more than 50 employees, trying to build a gender equality policy. We're helping them understand how gender equality works to their benefit within their company, how they can actually implement gender equality for their benefit and their employees' benefit, and try to pinpoint if there are things and policies and ways of company functions that need to be either corrected or brought to their attention in order to be improved. So that is something that we're doing, and we're actually very passionate about that. I'm actually very passionate about that too. And it's something that I was taught in university, that I worked on, and it's something that I actually want to make even more known to the public. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that via your podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. It's so interesting. Very, very, very happy that we can talk about it. So how did you start? So you mentioned that at uni you already were told about that. So when did you start to want to learn about gender inequality?
I had a course during my bachelor's degree back in 1998. That was back then in the UK, actually. I had a very empowering university teacher, and she taught us about gender equality. I think I have never heard of the term back then, and it was the first time that I was actually coming towards and across this kind of element and ideas. And day by day, assignment by assignment, and book by book, I started to understand how these inequalities affect all of us, men and women, and how can actually these inequalities can be improved and can be eliminated by men and women as well. So my bachelor thesis my graduate thesis was based on gender equality in the private sector. And then on my master's degree, again, my master thesis was based on gender equality on the private sector. Again, I think it was on the public sector, that I don't remember. It's been a long time ago. But I was inspired to look into it. I was inspired to do a lot of research. And believe me, it was a difficult task because we didn't have that much resources and research and data on the issue of gender equality and empowerment and gender-based violence. So it was a very interesting way of learning what to do with that. And when I came back home, I never gave up on the dream of actually wanting to work with on gender equality. So I learned, I did some seminars, I presented some seminars on that, and then I worked on gender equality and gender-based violence. So it was a whole experience that could actually be distilled into helping other companies do their best on gender equality.
That's so interesting. And you mentioned that in your current company, it's been 2 years, right?
Come January, yes, it will be, I think, 2 years, yes.
Wow. And so is the purpose, I'm not sure I understood, sorry, correctly. So did you start having that side of gender inequality in this company, or is the company's goal working on gender
It's the
equality?
company's goal. We have
Right,
this
okay.
as a service provided for companies that we're trying to help them build or rebuild their gender equality policies.
Okay, cool. That's so amazing. So how does one do that?
First of all, we visit the company, of course, and we try to assess the situation. We see what their policies, their current policies are based on women. We try to identify the ratio of women and men working in the company and how that can be actually improved. Then we form a report and we suggest so on and so, let's say, improvements and changes. And then based on European and national legislation on gender equality, we make further suggestions on how they can actually improve or build the gender equality policies. And this is a process that takes no longer than 2 weeks, but can actually affect in a positive way the company for the years to come and for the years of it being present into the market.
That is so cool. How do people usually react? Do you just like give the report and then kind of the company does it on their own, or do you work with the company also in building whatever they need to build?
I think it's based on their choice. Sometimes they ask for our help, and sometimes they say, "Okay, I will deal with it," or the company's lawyer or the company's HR will deal with that. So it's up to them to actually decide who wants to take on the changes. But most of the time, they do not actually know what is happening and cannot actually identify the gender equalities or the lack of gender representation in their company. They haven't even realized, let's say, that they have, for example, 3 men and 1 woman working in a certain department and so on and so forth. So I think it's an eye-opening experience for them, and they understand what they need to do to improve and update their company based on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That's so interesting and important. I guess these people contact you, right? So they already know that they want to do it. Are you sometimes confronted? Because like also I guess most of us, if not all of us, having been raised in a quite, not to say a lot, misogynistic society, we do have all misogynist bias. How much does that play in doing these reports, and are you confronted to a lot of misogyny when you work with this company?
Weirdly enough, I haven't been confronted by, let's say, misogynist comments and behaviors. They are actually very focused on trying to see how they can actually improve their company. So I think they know what they're going to do, and they just need help in order to identify what they need to do and what are the steps that they have to take. And I think it's a very positive step that they're actually contacting us and coming to us in order to do these improvements. And I'm really hoping, based on all the social media that we're doing, all the promotion, and via this podcast as well, that they will understand that this is something that will help their company, will improve the productivity, will improve their work environment, and the overall let's say, state of their employees.
Yeah, definitely. It's so important. Do you stay in touch after the reports? What are some things that are said?
I always follow up with an email. I try not to be too pushy, and I always follow up with an email. I think 15 to 20 days after the report is sent, and it's a good nudge, let's say, to remind them what they need to do, or to just get them moving even faster if they have decided to follow with someone else besides us in order to implement what needs to be changed.
And how did you end up in this job? So you talked about your bachelor, master's in gender equality, but then how does one become a consultant?
The current generation, let's say, of graduates and of university students are very lucky. This is something that I always say, even in my seminars. I wish I had the opportunities that current university students have, because they actually can access a university degree on gender equality. Back then, when I was a university student, we didn't have this choice, at least in the UK and in Greece. So, like I said, I based my graduate and my postgraduate thesis on gender equality, and had the courses, the university courses on gender equality as well. And I followed up with a lot of research and lifelong learning based on gender equality. And I worked as a gender equality consultant for the Ministry of Labour here in Greece for a year. So I distilled this knowledge and experience into being a gender equality consultant.
That makes sense. That's so cool. Is there anything that surprises you sometimes?
Pleasantly surprised, yes. I'm surprised, positively surprised, by the amount of women and men approaching me and telling me that they actually want to learn more and know what is gender equality, and the amount of young people that approached me to learn about gender equality. I think it was a month ago. I was in Crete for a seminar and a training, and I was talking to a young lady, and she was asking me all these questions about gender equality and gender-based violence, and she was thinking of doing her master's degree on gender-based violence, and she wanted to learn so much and wanted to get all the resources and wanted to pick my brain, let's say, about gender-based violence and gender equality. And it was so inspiring to actually see young people, women and men, wanting to know and wanting to learn and wanting to understand how this works and how we can actually all help in order to improve the situation and eliminate gender-based violence and promote gender equality as a whole.
That's so interesting and so refreshing. I really hope that, yeah, things are finally changing. Um, and was there any figure, anyone who had an impact on you on this path, on this?
I would have to say all the stories of the women that I read and I listened to during this years. I think it's almost 20 years. Oof, of being involved in gender equality. All these stories of women actually understanding what they can do and what they can achieve once they understand their worth, and how they transformed their life, they made their choice, they made their dreams happen and become true. These functioned as an everyday inspiration for me. I look back to all these stories and look back to all these women's lives, and also to men's lives who supported their women and supported the effort of achieving gender equality. And that inspires me on an everyday basis.
That's so interesting. Yeah, Can I even imagine all the stories that you must have heard? And what challenges have you faced?
The challenges were basically trying to communicate, let's say, what gender equality was because let's imagine the society about 20 or 15 years ago, we didn't know what gender equality was. So I was trying to communicate what it was, trying to make people understand what are the basic notions of it, and trying to convince them about the necessity and the benefits of applying gender equality within the personal space, the workspace, and the social space. So that was the challenge for me, and sometimes I still face this challenge. There are some people who still haven't actually fully understood what gender equality is and need to be informed, and I need to explain that to them. And I'm not, let's say, so negatively affected these days. But then again, it makes me understand how much more work we have to do in order to get to the next level, let's say, of being there, being 50-50.
Yeah, definitely. How do you deal with that? Because also it's always so tiring to explain the same thing that also once you've learned about it sounds so evident. How do you manage to not lose your energy by doing that?
I actually use the inspiration that I get from the women that I mentioned before, and all the stories that I've heard, and how these women change their lives. And I always keep in mind that once we start to inform even more people, these stories will get more and more, and that keeps me going. I think it's an ongoing process. The more people we inform, the more people will be benefited, and the more people will see the positive aspects of gender equality, because there are more than you can actually imagine, and there are no other than positive results. And there is nothing negative, let's say, on gender equality. It's only positive. Let's just say that.
Definitely. And was there something on the contrary that you found easier than you thought would be?
I actually thought that it would be difficult for me to actually communicate the cause and find, let's say, clients and companies who actually want to change their company. But it was, I was very welcomed. Let's say that I was very welcomed, and change was welcome. They once they reach out to me, they are very responsive to what I'm suggesting, and want to learn even more. And I'm always pleasantly surprised when they ask me for more resources, for more information, and want to speed up the process sometimes, and try to see what are the benefits in the short term, mid-term, and long term.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, learning that people want to change for the best is always, I guess, is always so great.
And inspiring.
Yeah, completely. Did they teach you as well?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always trying to learn. I'm a very big fan, let's say, and I'm an advocate of lifelong learning, even if it comes from a, let's say, formal form of education or an informal form of education. I try to be an active listener to anyone who is talking to me and who is giving me information. So all my clients and all the people and all the women that I'm interacting through this process and this journey are always teaching me something new. And being an active listener means sometimes even not responding to what you're listening to, and staying in silence and just processing the information that you get. And I do that. I get home and I start to rethink and replay in my mind all the conversations and all the information that I have received. And let's say I start to categorize them into what is useful for me, how I can implement that, what I can learn from that, and how this will, let's say, improve me as a professional and as a human being in a whole. So every single person that comes into my, let's say, radar, whether it's a business one, a professional one, or a social one, gives me something, gives me some source of knowledge and information, and new and exciting.
That's so cool. What do you think the last thing that you learned was?
I think I was pleasantly reminded about resilience from a talk I had I think 2 days ago, and it was a very random, let's say, event, nothing work related or socially related, just a random thing that I heard. I think it was on um, on the news or on a TV show. I'm not really sure, but I just received this information, and it made me understand that resilience is one of the basic soft skills that we actually need to have and be reminded to use in our everyday life. Yes, resilience, and I would have to say patience, and just waiting for the other person to complete whatever they are telling you or communicating with you, and then expressing your opinion and stating what you actually want to state to them.
That's so cool, so interesting. And why are you proud of this and of yourself?
Oh,
That's my favorite question.
um, that's actually my favorite question when I'm interviewing. So, I would have to say that I'm proud of not being afraid to change and be in the position of the person who is learning and not always being the person who is teaching. um, it's a funny feeling once you start teaching and being, let's say, a webinar instructor or a teacher or someone who is actually giving, let's say, instructions and giving knowledge. It's a weird sense of being in the opposite position of trying to be the one who is receiving information and is learning. So I'm very proud of myself for not being challenged by that and always trying to learn something new and something more, and not being afraid to be in the position of student.
This is so cool. Yeah, highly agree. And we're gonna conclude this episode on this, I think. Is there anything before we finish that we have not mentioned during our discussion that you'd like to mention?
I think we haven't mentioned my mentoring.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I am currently a mentor in 3 initiatives here in Greece, and I'm helping young entrepreneurs, female and male entrepreneurs, and trying to help them set their own business and start their entrepreneurship journey. And I'm also proud of that, of trying to give knowledge to someone else.
Yeah, definitely. This is so cool. Are you doing that only in Greece, or is it like...
Um, it happened that the initiatives were in Greece, but I'm always open to new. But actually, I'm a mentor for a European program as well, and I'm very excited for it to actually begin restart, because it's paused, restart in January, and see what the matching will be. I hope it will be someone from another country, so we can actually exchange cultural experiences as well.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I'll put all the resources in the like links or anything that you have in the resources so that anyone can
Thank you.
access this and reach out if they want to.
Of course.
Um, Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna finish this episode on this. Thank you so much. It was so interesting to hear you talk about that, and what you do is so important. So thank you for coming here and sharing all of this with us.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually have my very first podcast. It was a brilliant experience, and thank you very much for making me feel comfortable and making it a conversation, a casual conversation. I felt so good.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm really happy you enjoyed it. And in this podcast, there is a tradition that the guest finishes the podcast. So the mic is yours, and you can close with whatever you want.
Okay. So I'm actually going to paraphrase a quote from G.D. Anderson. And I think actually that women are strong and that this strength needs to be heard, be seen, and be positively used.